The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses, 40,000 dead Americans.
We were young and soldiers called to dedicate our lives in the name of God and country. Do what's just, boys, go do what's right. A hot band of brothers waiting on our chance to add one more page unto the victory dance. Here am I, Lord, send me, send me. Victory lies in the spirit of the lives of the men who died for me.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord say, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me.
Oh, send me.
This is Michael Broderick, Marine Corps veteran, actor, and Gallant Few board member. You are listening to the New American Veteran on Vets on Media. Now here's Carl Monger.
Thank you, Michael Broderick. Good afternoon. Today is June 25th, 2014. If this is the first time you've seen or listened to the show, I want to welcome you here today and hope you come back. TNAV is dedicated to those who said, here am I, send me, just as Kenny sang in his song at the intro. We honor veterans here, we highlight those who have transitioned successfully, and we identify resources that help veterans leverage their military experience into successful and rewarding lives after the military. Gallant Few's goal is to connect every new veteran with a hometown veteran mentor. The purpose is to help each veteran achieve a smooth and peaceful and successful transition, thereby preventing veteran unemployment, homelessness, and suicide. And the way that we do this is by creating and supporting a nationwide network of previously successfully transitioned veterans that engage locally with new veterans with the same military background now going through their own transition. We also seek to motivate and educate communities all across the nation to take responsibility for veterans returning to their communities. There are some that are doing some really cool stuff, and we'll start talking about those in the next few weeks, maybe months to come, because our goal is for every community out there, whether it's a big community, big city like Dallas, or a little community like Roanoke, Texas, we want them to have their own plan and to know exactly how they're going to welcome veterans back to their communities. Little Murphy, Texas did a 4th of July flag, it was a flag, I almost said flag show, but that's not the right thing. It was a ceremony, and it was a service, and it honored veterans, and it was a very appropriate way to mark Flag Day and an opening with that little community to help veterans returning back into their community. Today's show is dedicated to the 5 who were killed in a friendly fire accident last week in Afghanistan, and I didn't have all the names last week, so I'm going to read them off here today. Staff Sergeant Jason McDonald, 28, of Butler, Georgia. Staff Sergeant Scott R. Strudenman, 24, of Pasadena, California. Specialist Justin R. Helton, 25, of Beaver, Ohio. Corporal Justin R. Klaus, 22, of Sprague, Washington. And Private Second Class Aaron S. Toppin, 19, of Mokina, Illinois. They were killed June 9th in Gaza Village in Afghanistan. Studenmund and McDonald were assigned to the 1st Battalion, 5th Special Forces Group, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Helton was assigned to the 18th Ordnance Company, 192nd Ordnance Battalion, 52nd Ordnance Group, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Klaus and Toppin were assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division, Fort Carson, Colorado. Since the Afghanistan War began in October 2011, 2,323 Americans have died in the conflict. And I meant to highlight this so that I could say who it is, and I don't want to mess it up. I believe that it is Staff Sergeant Jason McDonald, also served in the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and a picture of his obituary shows him wearing that tan beret of the Rangers. Also in breaking news, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Ryan Pitts will receive the Medal of Honor for bringing the fight to the enemy during a July 13, 2008 combat engagement at Vehicle Patrol Base Collar in Afghanistan. That battalion that was deployed there in that particular time, if I remember right, 3 medals of honor for actions that the soldiers in that battalion took. And I believe the battalion had a Presidential Unit Citation, which is the equivalent of every person assigned to the battalion receiving the Distinguished Service Cross. Phenomenally decorated unit, and what a team that must have been part of. Now when they're back over here, we got to connect them with other members of teams just like that, so they don't feel isolated and disconnected from what's going on. Let me play a quick little short intro here.
This is Aaron Childress with Chili Off the Grid, Dish Network, channel 266, Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Central. And you're listening to the New American Veteran on Vets on Media.
One of the things that we have rolled out here very, very recently, I'm going to see if I can pull up this webpage to show you, is called Airborne Ranger in the Sky. AirborneRangerInTheSky.com or arits.org. I think the .com works there also. Sometime last year, I don't remember exactly when it was, a Ranger dad came to me and said, "When are you going to honor my son?" And as I learned more about it, I realized that we had not recognized his son because his son had left active duty, wasn't killed on active duty, was killed in an accident post-service. And Sergeant Aaron Barr, you'll see him scrolling across the screen there on the right. But he was killed by a hit-and-run driver after he left the military. So he's disconnected, isolated from the community, which is exactly what we don't want to have happen. And then as his family is grieving and going through this process, they weren't connected to the community. And there's so much that this community could have done to comfort that family, maybe help in the service, doing a Once an Eagle ceremony, just a number of things. Probably most important, just providing emotional support to the family. But we didn't know, disconnected. So the dad said, "Well, you recognize other Rangers. Well, when are you going to recognize my son?" So that sparked the genesis of what now has become AirborneRangerInTheSky.com. Every soldier that seeks to be assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment has to go through RASP. RASP 1. RASP 2 is for the senior NCOs and officers. And this has replaced RIP. So all the way back to the beginning of Ranger time, when a soldier goes to RIP, he gets assigned an Airborne Ranger in the Sky. And that Airborne Ranger in the Sky is kind of like a guardian angel, protector, and it's also somebody that prospective Ranger learns the history of. They learn what that Ranger did, and it serves as a motivator, and it keeps them connected through the strands of time by that service. So we thought that concept is so much ingrained in the community. Why don't we take that an extra step? And why don't we look for any Ranger that has ever passed away for any reason? So whether he died on the beaches of Normandy 70 years ago, or if he died in a nursing home yesterday, or if he died in a training accident, was killed in combat, you name it, if that Ranger is passed on to the patrol base in the sky, we want their family, friends, Ranger buddies, whoever, to go into AirborneRangerInTheSky.com or ARITS, A-R-I-T-S, and create a profile for that individual. I'm showing right now on the screen Lieutenant Colonel William Earl Bowers from Huntsville, Alabama. Colonel Bowers was 46 years old at the time of his death, but see, he didn't die on active duty. He died as a contractor in Iraq in 2004. And a death like that goes outside the immediate family and friends, it goes unnoticed. And so we want to be able to recognize and honor each one of these Rangers that have passed away. And we also want to create a historical record. We see how if a Ranger is killed in a combat action, this site could include maps. It could include audio, video. It could include notes, news reports. We want it to be a historical site that lasts in perpetuity. And we want it to never cost a penny to a family member or a Ranger or anybody else that creates a profile. Now, so there are some things behind the scenes that happen. When somebody creates a profile, we got to make sure that it is appropriate and that it doesn't contain any inappropriateness, language or pictures or anything else before we allow it to be published. And then it has to be contained or controlled in this space. I'll raise money through Gallant Few. There's a link actually on the site. If somebody wants to donate to help support this mission, they can. But that's not the purpose for this. We have underwritten the cost of doing this out of money that Gallant Few has already raised, and as part of the Darby Project, which is Ranger veterans mentoring other Ranger veterans. I hope that someday this becomes something that perhaps expands to all of the military, because when you look out there, some families do tribute pages and they become static, and 5 years later there's nothing that's updated. They're not able to accept uploads from other family friends or a Ranger buddy, in this case, that came to us with Colonel Bauer's bio. He was very insistent that this was a great way to honor this veteran. So I'm not going to go into any more details about it. But what we do need now, since we have released arits.org, is we need you to go there and we need you to create some profiles. We need you to make some bios, because we need to find out now. We've got to put together how can we break it. And we want to continue making it stronger. Kent Morrison, IX Boat Technologies out of Colorado, he's a Ranger veteran himself. And he has donated a tremendous amount of his own personal time to creating this platform. And for his work, I'm greatly and deeply appreciative. We're trying to make sure that it loads very rapidly on mobile devices and that it works across all platforms. So please go there, check that out. Help us to continue to honor all of these airborne Rangers in the sky. Okay, I'm almost ready to bring on my guest, Mike Rials from the Brain Performance Institute. Before I do that, one real quick other thing. Mike Schlitz, who's a Ranger veteran, double-hand amputee. Most of you who know me know he's one of my very best friends. And he developed an infection in his ankle a couple of days ago. And he's posted this on social media, so I'm not giving away any kind of HIPAA stuff by doing this. But he needs prayers, because when you're burned to the extent that he is, you don't need to get an infection that doesn't need to last for very long. So he is now in the hospital at Brooke Army Medical Center, where he's sending text messages and he's posting on Facebook, and he's the same old Mike. But we sure need thoughts and prayers to go out to him and to the team of doctors that are taking care of him. We need that guy to get well quickly. All right, I'm going to try one more thing here. Let me see if I can play this video. Last time that I tried to do this, it didn't necessarily want to play the audio through. So let's find out if it will let me screen share so that I can play this video. All right, come on now. It's being a little obnoxious here. Bear with me for just one more minute. Got my guest holding on the line, waiting for me to play this video that for some reason just does not want to come up. It'd be so cool if I could play this. The Brain Performance Institute I got connected with here recently has an organization that does some astounding work. For some reason, it's not one to... Oh, here we go. Hit operator headspace and timing. If anybody knows what that is, the window was hidden, so I'm trying to play the video and it just doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, so now let me reload this guy and see if we can actually make this happen. I'm sure everybody loves looking at me while I'm trying to figure the darn thing out.
Yeah, I think the most appealing thing for me about the SMART program, and really what the Center for Brain Health is doing on the whole, is just kind of, for me, the performance orientation of it. The fact that, you know, when I wanted to be a good football player, I found great strength and conditioning coaches to help me kind of max out my athleticism so I could be as good as I could athletically. And same thing operationally. When we were in the military, we go to these premier shooting coaches in all the world so we can learn to use that weapon, you know, whatever that weapon of choice is in that profession. So for me, you know, it was really natural to learn to really kind of train my brain. The SMART program's ability to help me do that was really attractive.
And what happened on the first day during the SMART training was something that I'll be eternally grateful for to the center, because instead of going to get drugs and everything else for what I was going through with these headaches, literally was just cured by simple training of just understanding my thoughts and understanding my mind.
we love learning stuff, you know. Anything we can learn about what's going on with our bodies, because you change. I mean, in the military, you definitely change. And so, you know, we don't know why we're changing. We feel it, but we don't know why. So to get that understanding of the fundamentals, what's going on, yeah, it's definitely something that we want to look at.
Throughout the week, I realized that this is a way to train your mind to stay healthy. For the first time, I was able to focus on something without having 1,000 other things come in at the same time.
Out of all the drugs I did and all the people I talked to, this helped tenfold. It was 5 days. And this was tenfold better than all the other stuff.
Center for Brain Health, in my opinion, they open you up the doors. And they show you that, you know, everybody's going through this. There's a lot of people going through different things, and they're breaking it down for you so you understand.
Every deployment, when you leave, you come back a little bit different, regardless of what happens there, and regardless of what kind of deployment you're on, you change a little bit. And in some of the deployments, you kind of almost lose a little bit of yourself. And so I came here, and everybody knows my name. It's like cheers, and you love it. And it was the personalities and the fact that people care here that actually got me back in here several times.
I think it should be mandatory training. Smart training could almost be considered like a weapon, like a special weapon for our men and women that are going to go over and fight. I mean, what more powerful weapon do we all have than our brain?
All right, Mike, I hear you coming on the line there.
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. You know, that video still did not play exactly like I wanted it to, so that was kind of odd. I'm going to have to do a little experiment offline so I can figure that out. But anyway, Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you are a veteran of service, United States Marine Corps, been deployed a couple of times. Tell us real quick about your service.
Yeah, right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps, and I can hear myself back there talking. And I went into the infantry. 2004, I was in the push through Fallujah. I was in Haditha on my second deployment, and then I was fortunate to be attached to MARSOC in Afghanistan in 2007. I served my 4.5 years, and then I got out. I was diagnosed TBI, and struggled a little bit when I first got out with that painful temporary loss of identity.
Sure.
I was in charge of 43 guys when I got out. I was acting a platoon sergeant. When I got out, I didn't have anybody to lead, and I was failing leading myself. So I heard you mention the isolation piece earlier, and that was definitely one of the causes for me that I ended up doing, just isolating myself and self-medicating, to be honest, to kind of try to redefine my identity.
How'd that work for you?
Not too hot. It was really when two buddies that I served with, I cared deeply about, that were also going through similar issues. They both actually took their lives, committed suicide. That really kind of was a slap in the face for me, to kind of straighten up, end up going to school, getting my psychology degree, and then actually was a Brain Performance Institute at the Center for Brain Health. I was actually a participant. I went through their post-traumatic stress program. I went through their traumatic brain injury program. I went through about the video you just saw, that SMART training. I went through that as well. Kind of went through the gamut, if you will, here. And then they hired me on to actually continue serving veterans and so work with veterans for veterans.
So tell me a little bit about how the Brain Performance Institute got started. I'm going to pop up here on the screen. Should be able to see part of that flyer that you sent me earlier.
Okay, absolutely. So the Brain Performance Institute, it's a nonprofit that's part of the Center for Brain Health, which is actually a part of the University of Texas at Dallas. And the Center for Brain Health it's a research institute. It's been doing research on the brain, just like it sounds like, for over 30 years by our director, Dr. Sandy Chapman. So they've really figured out how the brain loves to operate, the way it's wired to operate. They identified core parts of our brain, core functions, and it's in our frontal lobe. It's really what makes us human. Everything when you talk about reason, judgment, decision making, emotional regulation, inhibition. That's all done in our frontal lobe. So more importantly, they develop strategies to actually train your frontal lobe, to train those parts of the brain.
How in the heck do you do that?
Well, it's all about how you use your brain. It's really about how you think. So one of the things we say, we're going to teach you how to think instead of what to think. And it's definitely not a knock on the academic system, but if you recall going through, there are 12 years of education, and typically the teacher gave you information. You just had to repeat that information back to them.
Oh, yeah, just memorize it. You didn't actually need to make it work for anything.
Absolutely. So that's kind of that bottom-up approach. We found out the brain loves to operate. It's really this top-down approach. It's really extracting these big ideas and big pieces of information and making it personal to you by adding your own knowledge and your own experience and actually creating meaning out of information, whatever information you're exposed to. And that's not only strengthening kind of connections in between your brain and how your brain communicates, and we all know how important communication is, but also increasing blood flow. We need blood flow just like our body needs nutrition and vitamins and all that good stuff. So brain blood flow actually delivers glucose and oxygens to your neurons.
So you teach at BPI there, you teach methods on how to increase the blood flow to your brain?
Correct. So research, the beautiful thing is all this is scientifically shown to work through multiple different populations, from children with ADHD, individuals with traumatic brain injury, just healthy aging in particular. So through the research, the programs kind of stood the test of time. So we got, through private funds, we got a $2 million grant from a lady called Lyda Hill, who really just said, go reach as many veterans as you can. And that's how Brain Performance Institute was actually established a little over a year ago. And 3 veterans, an executive director, kind of kicked it off and started it, and now we're about to 15 employees, if you will. We're partnered with numerous universities, other nonprofit organizations. We're getting inside the active duty side over at Fort Hood and in Coronado. So it's exciting.
So initially it started off just focused on civilians, is that right? 30 years ago when it began, did it have a sports-related purpose, or was it just an outreach of the University of Texas?
It was the University of Texas at Dallas. Our director, Dr. Sandy Chapman, she's been a neuroscientist this whole time, really studying the brain. I would say it was brain-related. I know when she went to school, it was kind of under that basis that after you've had an injury, this is best you're going to get. You're going to have to be a parking attendant the rest of your life, what have you. Or that idea that, you were born with the knowledge of the IQ that you have. And the Center for Brain Health has really debunked those myths that, your IQ can change throughout your life. And there's more to just a standardized test, if you will, that was developed 100 years ago to determine that. So,
you'd think our knowledge of the brain would be a little more advanced than that 100 years ago. You'd think our knowledge of the brain would be a little more advanced than 100-year-old technology.
You would think so, but if I asked you right now, how do you measure physical health, what would you say?
Oh, I'd say probably by resting heart rate and your ability to run a certain amount of distance in a certain time, lift a certain amount of weight.
Absolutely. You look at just fat percentage in the body, blood pressure, numerous things.
No, I don't look at fat percentage in the body. That's
okay. Well, yeah, right.
Yeah, we have to measure that other ways.
We've come decades. The body. You look at athletes today. There's bigger, faster, stronger. But if I asked you, how do you know you have a healthy brain? How would you know?
How well I can remember something from 1 minute to the next. Maybe do one of those. Like when I was a kid, my grandmother had one of those games where you have the cards, you flip upside down, you got to find the pairs by turning them over and remembering where the other match was.
So memory, just even equating brain power to memory in itself, that's there's more to brain power now. We truly believe that. So, but we are just now scratching the surface on brain science and the health of a brain, and really that idea of building resilience, especially for, look at the special operations field and just even infantry. It's just an impact environment, whether it's breaching doors, whether it's jumping out of airplanes. It's the brain's taking a beating, and I know a lot of guys, we were just now training, and they could all identify the cognitive shift they'd have where they, the memory's not quite, or the decision making is a little bit slower, because it is just like football players, such an impact sport that the brain does take a beating. So how do we make the brain more resilient? How do we protect it so when you do take a hit, you prepare it, just like strengthening the body? You build your tendons and your ligaments and your muscles strong enough. If you have a tear, you're going to recover a little bit faster, or you're going to prevent a tear. And that's what we're really trying to do with the brain. And Center for Brain Health is really at the cutting edge of all that.
So talk a little bit about brain injury and folks that you've experienced military-wise that have come in through the program there. Can you talk about, I guess, how many veterans come to you that have a bunch of little mild, maybe they don't think they have a traumatic brain injury, but because they've had a series of smaller episodes, maybe they really do, or just a little experience about some of the veterans maybe that have come into the program?
Yeah, definitely. A quick disclaimer, I'm definitely not a doctor by any means, so this is really just
that makes two of us
that I'm talking about here. But a lot of guys, you don't know. You think you have to have a diagnosis for TBI to think that you've ever had a traumatic brain injury, and that term, just traumatic brain injury, in and of itself, is pretty overwhelming. It's
scary.
It's hard to digest that, if you will. So the fact that you don't have to be knocked unconscious, the fact that just being rattled, it can do a little bit more damage than actually being unconscious. That there's just so much that we don't know about it. But so much of it is that damage to that frontal lobe. And when we talk about anxiety, talk about ability to block out information, or even come up with that right word, or even the memory, or trying to make a decision. It's all that's right there. It's just possible impacts, or repeated impacts over and over again that you really don't recognize, and you think you're fine, especially in the moment. We had guys overseas, they get in the ID, they get thrown from that truck and the other one, and then 2 hours later they're hit again, and the damage that does, it's just we're just now scratching the surface on what's that really doing, and how to really prevent it by building cognitive reserve, and then also how to get you back to elite performance. And that's really what our goal is.
Yeah, I know in my own experience from being on active duty, I was never hit with an IED, but I was around a lot of stuff that blew up. I had a flashbang go off about 18 inches in front of my nose one time that definitely rattled my shell around a little bit. And then jumping, landing at night, half the time it's foot butt back of the head landing. So you see stars when that kind of stuff happens, and sometimes you joke about it with your buddies. Yeah, I hit my head hard enough that I saw stars. That kind of thing would that qualify in the traumatic brain injury catalog?
In mine, yes. Any type of concussive injury, the way we have.
I'm just looking for an excuse here to tell my wife why I don't remember to pick up stuff at the grocery store.
That's absolutely, and definitely in our TBI program, any concussive injury, whether it happened in the military, outside of it, there's going to be damage there, and it's hard to see, especially, and not everybody has an MRI machine or an fMRI machine hanging out in their garage, So a lot of times we just attribute things to ourselves. And we sit there, we forget our keys, and we remember that the rest of the day, but we don't give credit to our brain how much we actually remember that day. But some of those times when we start forgetting stuff, it's not only maybe an injury, but also just how we use our brain that can be causing some of the deficits that people are seeing in themselves. And you look at Alzheimer's is at an all-time high. In the last, one of the greatest achievements in the last 100 years was the doubling of the lifespan. We're living to 80 years old now, but we're doing a lot for the body, but we're just now learning about the brain. And there's a way to use it and a way not to use it.
Can you give a couple examples of veterans that have been through your program, without getting into detailed personal specifics, but maybe somebody came in, how you evaluated them, and then How is it going now?
Absolutely, and just so I'm not getting too personal, but even some of the guys you saw in the video, they've all been through the program. There was a guy, he was a sniper for the Navy, Navy SEAL Scout sniper, and he came home. And his transition was straight off the plane from Afghanistan to being a father in the hospital with his wife having his baby.
Wow.
And then he was taking in all information, whether it was an email, whether it was a phone call from his mother, at the same intensity he was when he was the point man going down the road looking for IEDs. And anytime you kind of take that intensity towards everything, it's going to be overwhelming. So he had migraines. 2 o'clock, he was getting checked out. He'd have to get in a dark room. He had to pull over on the side of the road just because he was doing the same thing in traffic. So the idea of there's so much information now, this information overloaded society that we live in. If you think about ESPN, you got the guy talking on the screen, you got the banner down the bottom, you got a time clicker, you got instant updates. It's just this information overload that our brain's trying to process all that. So how can we block all that? So many people try to focus on what's important, but what we teach people, it's more about blocking everything that's not important. So then what's left is what's important. And he was able to do that after the first day, and just that self-awareness of being able to check himself and check how he lets information into his brain, what he's going to pay attention to. His migraines mitigated.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Just
it's all about how we use our brain.
Yeah, without having to take any medication or anything like that. Just that's pretty cool.
Very.
What have you had in terms of the worst traumatic brain injury that you've worked with? Put you on the spot here.
Worst traumatic brain injury we worked with.
I won't.
Well, veteran-wise, it's.
No, it doesn't even have to be.
It
doesn't have to be veteran. I'm just thinking
general,
for somebody that's listening
really
here.
The severe side, I don't. I don't necessarily work with it. We call it high performance brain training because it's one, we stay away from treatment, but it's also everyone that has a brain can benefit from the SMART training.
Yep.
But
I'm asking you the wrong questions.
What's that?
I'm asking you the wrong questions.
I don't necessarily work directly with guys with. We have a TBI program that it's a different department, and they have. So if we get guys that have definitely come in with TBI diagnosis or even kind of the red flags of possible TBI, then we send them over there to that program, and then the SMART program really gets all the other veterans as well.
Sure. So you and I talked before about some of the programs that you have out there. You have a program where you offer for corporate executives to come in, and they pay a fair amount of money to come in and go through this brain training. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and then how it might pertain to a veteran?
So basically, the training we were talking about before, and how I was talking about the Navy SEAL Scout Sniper, he went through the SMART program. So executives go through the same SMART program, except they pay for it. We had Lyda Hill actually pay the money up front to reach as many veterans as we can, who reached over 300 so far in the last year and a half. So that's the program. Sometimes we mix veterans with corporate executives. I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but it one just kind of diminish the gap. So one, corporate executives can see how valuable veterans are and the experience they bring, just with the knowledge base and that change in perspective of serving something bigger than themselves, making life or death situations, knowing what loyalty, commitment, work ethic is. A lot of that gets illustrated and demonstrated in front of corporate executives, and it's pretty unique to see.
I think that's awesome. I read an article, excuse me, I think it was in the Dallas Business Journal. I don't have it laying here right next to me, from this last week, and it talked about the highest corporate pay for executives in Texas. And one of them, and I don't remember off the top of my head, BP or something, but is an oil, somebody heads up an oil company. And his total compensation package for a year is like $25 million, which just blows your mind. But I think if you could get that guy to sit down next to a veteran that's had a great history of service to the country and let them go through something like that together. I have my own personal philosophy about overpaid corporate executives that work for public companies, publicly held companies. I won't get into all that right now, but I think it would sure make him take a look at realigning maybe his priorities. And maybe he gives 24 of that $25 million away to charity. I don't know. But it seems like that kind of benefit from having that corporate executive sit next to that veteran, that's a great benefit that you offer to society as a whole. The more of those that can happen, the better.
Absolutely, especially with, and look, it's another conversation in itself as well. Just the media, you know, so much of the media coverage on veterans is sometimes the negative side, and that idea of if it bleeds, it reads, or what have you, and fear sells, and so much is focused on post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury. But we really want that approach of empowerment. We believe veterans, no matter what the occupation, have a skill set and a maturity, the ability to put something in bigger than themselves, before themselves. That idea of, you know, carrying the nation's flag, that sense of purpose, that sense of camaraderie, work ethic, mission accomplishment, all those things, you know, are valuable to this society, and we just really try to, one, illustrate them and then demonstrate them to others. So if anything, it negates what you see on the news about the PTSD, TBI, but 25%, whatever that is guys with severe PTSD, TBI, or the third range. You know, there's still 75% other guys, you know, that doesn't represent, that bring all those things, and same with the guys with PTSD and TBI. There's a lot to offer, and we're just trying to recognize it.
Yeah, talking about education, two things I want to bring up real quick. One is a couple of days ago, I got a text from a veteran that I've known, been a friend of mine for several years, and he said that he had gone into his boss and asked for time off because he had to go to the VA for an appointment, and he shared with his boss that it was post-traumatic stress therapy. And his boss said, if I'd have known that you had that, I'd never would have hired you. And now this is like 2 or 3 days later, the guy texted me a picture this morning. He's got a termination notice in his hand. And you know, I think there's a huge misperception out there among corporations, among just the general public. If there was a woman that had been raped, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you were raped. You have post-traumatic stress. I'm going to fire you." That would be unheard of. And so that's something that hopefully you guys can, with the awareness part and the corporate executive, certainly impact a little bit. And then the second piece is, I don't know if you've heard much about this, but the warfighter rights movement. Have you followed or seen any of that stuff running around social media?
No.
Warfighter rights movement. Yeah, they're it started based on some discrimination cases against veterans because of post-traumatic stress. So in veteran, we had like 3 instances that happened, one right after another, and one of the veterans that was involved in these tried to kill himself. And it was an incident where he and his spouse were going through a divorce, and the spouse claimed that the husband had PTSD, and so she should have 100% custody of the kids, and it all happened with no proof, no evidence, no diagnosis. She'd made the allegation, the court believed it, and stripped the veteran of all parental rights. And so that kind of spawned the warfighter rights movement. So I'll send you a link to that, because I'm gonna cover that, not so much on this show, but on a future show I'll bring Boone Cutler back on, and we'll talk about how that's going on.
Absolutely, please do.
There's a bunch of veterans out there, hopefully a bunch, that are going to hear this, and they're going to say, I need to get me some of that brain performance training. How can they, if they're in Texas, that's one thing because they're close to you, but if they're in Nebraska or California or someplace, can you direct them to any resources that they might be able to access that would help them?
Absolutely. So there's we have a couple different platforms. We similar to, I think, what you do with the Google Talk or the GoToMeeting type, we are delivering SMART also virtually.
Oh, nice.
As well. We also, We're going to Idaho in a couple days to work with nonprofit out there. So we go to organizations that have a good location of veterans with really proactive, engaged, I don't know the right term, a supervisor of them, if you will, whether it's a university, whether it's a nonprofit organization. We'll travel. We come fully funded, and we'll travel to you. We also have a couple programs that get guys, we'll fly them here and have them actually go through the training, and we house them. We work with other organizations that kind of do the transitional housing or even paying for people to get here. So absolutely, the best way really is to contact me, and I can get them to the right place, or we have a list of other resources depending on where they're at that we can try to find for them.
So how can somebody contact you? What's the best way?
Through email or my office phone. My email is mike.rials, that's M-I-K-E .rials, R-I-A-L-S, at utdallas.edu.
And I'll make sure and post that. I can go back in on this video later, and I can add that as an overlay so people can see that. I think I can do that.
Absolutely.
And then website, I showed the picture of your website earlier.
Absolutely, the BrainPerformanceInstitute.com or .org. I think we have the riverfront on those as well. Even at Center for Brain Health, there's a link to us there as well. So you'll be able to find us.
Good. So so for those of us out there that had a couple of bangs on the head, there's hope.
Or if you haven't had a bang on the head, we can get you better. It's all about performance. It's all about you walk through these doors.
Hey, now that's a great point that you just made. If you have just another 2 minutes, talk about that. So you don't have a TBI, but the techniques that you have, because if they're going to work when you have a TBI, they're going to work when you don't.
Absolutely. The biggest impact we're going to make on society is on the healthy side. So we've reached over 25,000 kids. We go into, and it's all state-funded funds now, that we go into a lot of low SES schools, and we train middle school kids. That's when your frontal lobe really starts emerging. We reach them. We've trained over 25,000. We're really bringing in kids from low SES. They're standardized math, science, reading, all the way up to where private school level kids are, just by teaching them how to use their brain. And this promotes so much of it's functional for the warrior side, just in improving the life functionally, but ultimately it's also about brain health as well. So whether you don't need a TBI or PTSD or any type of cognitive deficit to benefit from how to use your brain, everybody with a brain can benefit from that. The research shows how the brain was wired to operate, where it loves to operate. We're just going to give you the tools to do it so you can drive it and be the mechanic of your own brain.
That's too cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate you making time to be on the show today. Thanks for your service, and thanks for your continuing service, because you're helping a lot of veterans out there, and that's a great thing.
Well, I wish the same to you, Carl, and thanks for having me.
All right, Mike. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
My name is Roy Murray, Jr. My father was Roy A. Murray, and he was company commander of Fox Company in the 1st Ranger Battalion, and then later the battalion commander of 4th Ranger Battalion, which he led through Africa, through Sicily, the boot of Italy, and then ending at the end of Anzio. And you're listening to Gallant Fuse, the New American Veteran, on Vets on Media.
I had the honor of meeting him maybe 2 months ago. It was at one of the first Saturday breakfasts, and so I want to hit on that real quick. So that helped me remember that. First Saturdays. This, I don't know if it was always first Saturday or not, but a long time ago, some Rangers from World War II got together and ate breakfast periodically, and coupled with that, the community where I lived before had what they called Final Fridays, and so they'd have some special entertainment thing down in the artsy part of town where you could go. Excuse me here just a second. Mute myself so you don't hear me cough in the microphone. And everybody knew the final Friday of the month you went down to this part of town, and they would have bands, they'd have drink stands and all that kind of fun stuff. So I kind of combined the two in my head, and I thought, what if veterans got together the first Saturday of every month, 9 o'clock in the morning, and sat around, had a cup of coffee, maybe ate some eggs, and got to know and network other veterans in the area. Don't have to belong to an organization. You don't have to be initiated. You don't have to pay dues. You don't have to any of that stuff. No pressure, no stress, no sales pitch. Just come, network, get to know other veterans that live in your local area. There are now First Saturday programs that are going on across the country. And if you go, I've got a Facebook page. If you search First Saturday Veteran Breakfast, you'll find the Facebook page. And you may find one in your area. And if there's not one in your area, start one. It may just be you going for the first couple of times, but let's use social media, and I'll help you publicize it so that more and more people can come to it. But there are some down in Savannah, Georgia. I think they're splitting it off into two groups now because they were getting so large. The first of last month, I was in Atlanta, and just like I had dreamed of a couple of years ago, if I traveled somewhere on the first Saturday and I looked online, is there a first Saturday here? And there was. In Atlanta, I was there, and I got to go sit down and have breakfast with 12 other Rangers and some family members that accompanied them, little kids, spouses. It was a great deal. And from that meeting, there are some relationships that are helping other things develop down the road, whether it's a job opportunity or a way to help more veterans or connecting with a business or whatever. So it's an extremely important function, and I hope that you'll take a look for that first Saturday Facebook page. And I am now, because I can't talk and type at the same time, I'm looking up nomadic veterans, hashtag nomadic veterans, because I want to give you an update on where the boys are now. You heard me interview. I've given a couple of updates that these two characters, Marty Scovelin and Leo Jenkins, both Ranger Battalion combat veterans, decided just a couple of weeks ago that they're going to try to raise some awareness and some money and take off with, each of them have $100 in their pocket, whatever they can carry on their backs, and they're just going to see how many miles can they get on their brains and on their brawn. And so far, that journey has encompassed hopping a ride on a train, which they said they don't recommend anybody, and jumping off of that train, which they really don't recommend anybody, all the way through to now they've gone across the United States, started in Denver, Colorado, made it to New York, and now I'm looking at their Facebook page. They're in Frankfurt, Germany, 15 hours ago. So now tell me, this has only been like a week and a half that they've been going. This is supposed to be a 21-day trip. They may make it all the way back around to Denver. Wouldn't that be awesome if they did a circumference of the world with $100 in their pockets and what they're carrying on their back? What they found going across the country is that in this world with the Rangers, the Ranger Veteran Network is extremely strong, and we've done a lot of things to build this network over the last 4 years. I often say to people, you tell me a community in the United States, and I'll find a Ranger veteran there that lives either in that community or probably within an hour's drive, and virtually across the country. And as we set up Gallant Few, that was the goal. So Ranger veteran leaves active duty, and initially Gallant Few was focused on Ranger veterans. Ranger veteran leaves Columbus, Georgia, Fort Benning, and goes to live in Omaha, Nebraska. That Ranger veteran should be greeted when he gets to Omaha, Nebraska by a Ranger veteran that lives in Omaha, Nebraska. And further, if we can align it, same battalion, both 3rd Battalion veterans, if we can align it by even the company or by the MOS, medic, or infantryman, or if we can align it by, on top of all that, if the young veteran coming to town wants to go to school and get a MBA, then we want that veteran that we connect him with to be the same branch of the service, the same regiment if possible, speaking in the Rangers, same battalion if possible, and be a CPA or be a business owner, somebody that can help that younger veteran not only make it through school, but also professionally network into internships or job opportunities. Now, because we've expanded outside of the Ranger Network now, we took the Ranger slice and we call that the Darby Project, after General Darby, World War II. We've started focusing on Marine Corps Special Operations and Marine Corps Combat Infantrymen, and that's called the Raider Project. And we've got a bunch of Marines that are coming into the Raider Project now. We're expanding outside of the Ranger network in the Army. We've got some groups that have started with the Old Guard, with some other infantry units, and Philip Kitts has been leading the effort to pull those communities together. So our ultimate goal is, when a veteran leaves any post anywhere, any branch of the service, and they go to any community in the country, anywhere in the country, we connect that veteran with a veteran just like him or her, same branch of the service, same MOS, same identical skill sets, experiences, all the way down to then civilian occupation interest. Because the closer we can align that veteran piece, the more trusting, the more connected those two are going to be right off the bat. And then ultimately, the better that veteran is going to have an opportunity at re-engaging back into that community. It works extremely, extremely well. And my goal, we talk about, when I first helped start Gallant Few, was 18 veterans a day committed suicide, and that's what motivated me to come up with a concept. Now they say it's 22 veterans a day committing suicide, despite throwing millions of dollars at this program and having lots of public service announcements and everything else. It's only getting worse. We can't stop 22 veteran suicides a day. That's impossible to do, but we can stop the next one. And if we can engage that veteran and connect them in the community when they get back with a veteran mentor that they immediately have a connection with due to service history, then we're going to avoid all the way down 10, 15, 20 years, 2 months, whatever it is, we're going to avoid that problem that leads into the unemployment, the homelessness, and the suicide issues. It's totally preventive. We want to be preventive in everything we do. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to bail people out when they're homeless. We want to prevent them from ever getting there in the first place. If a veteran comes to Gallant Few and they are homeless or on the verge of homeless, we're going to do everything that we can to connect them with the resources that are going to help them get through that, and that includes finding them a veteran mentor that is just like them in that same community so they can engage and help that person. But I want to be really, really specific about being preventive is less expensive, it's more cost effective, it's more efficient. From the terms of a nonprofit that helps veterans, it is way less expensive to do that than to have to bail somebody out when they've gotten into extremely difficult times. And we'll save relationships along the way too. And you all know I can talk about that. I can talk about that forever. Those of you that have been with me in person know I can talk about that forever. So I'll spare you going through any more of that right now. There was something else that I wanted to mention to you. I put on the show slide before, and I'll pop it back up here in a minute before we do the end of the show, that I'm going to move to Tuesdays. My travel schedule is starting to turn into a Wednesday, Thursday departure time, which steps right on this show. And next week we will not have a show because I'm going to be traveling, but I'm traveling on Tuesday, so it wouldn't matter Tuesday or Wednesday, although I might be able to do a phone interview. We'll see. I'm trying to get a person for this interview that is going to be really interesting and you're really going to like it. But I'm not going to announce that until I know exactly who it is and if he's going to be available. So probably no show next week, no live show next week. It'll be recorded if so. But after that, after the 4th of July weekend, it's going to go to Tuesdays. And if you know anybody or if you want to appear on this show, drop me an email. Go to gallantfew.org, look in the top right-hand corner. You're going to find my mobile phone number and my email address right there, so you can reach out to me at any time. Let me know who's a good candidate, and if it's you, great. Let's get you on the show and talk about how your transition has gone or what you can do to help other veterans transition. Let me see. I'm reviewing real quick to see if there was anything else that I wanted to cover. I think that's it. I already told you about Mike, Prayers for Mike. I told you about ARITS, AirborneRangerInTheSky.com. Help us populate those, pay honor to more and more of those veterans. You know, how cool would it be if 6 generations down the line, some kid Googles their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather and up pops a memorial page about his Ranger history. That would just be too cool. And ultimately, if that happens for every person, every veteran from the military, that'd be pretty darn cool too. Thanks for being on the show today. I'm going to go back over here and put my slide on. At the close of every show, it's a tradition that I play taps, and I do that out of respect for those who have served and gone on before, out of respect for those airborne rangers in the sky, and I do it because it's hauntingly beautiful. But any veteran that hears that song, there are memories that come right back to you. And those of you who, you know who you are. So I don't think you can ever hear Taps too much. Absolutely gorgeous. Thanks for listening to the New American Veteran today. And we'll talk to you here in 2 weeks. That beautiful rendition of Taps is a public domain recording created by a soldier or employee of the United States Army, and as such is not eligible for copyright protection in the United States. Kenny Thomas' song Send Me is used by permission of Kenny Thomas. All other work or recording is original work or used by permission. This has been a presentation of Gallant Fuse, the New American Veteran, on the Vets on Media Global Network.